Affirmations and awakening. Do affirmations have a place in the awakening process, in the realization process? Someone was messaging me describing that I wrote about this in my book and that it was helpful to look into their own experience and see how they were using affirmations. And I actually had forgotten I wrote about it. I still don't remember what I said about it, but they reminded me. And essentially what I said was that affirmations can be like adding another layer of inauthenticity to the structure of the identity. So what I mean by that is that if you're experiencing something, let's say at the emotional level that's uncomfortable, like my boss doesn't treat me fairly, that's your perception. And then there's some underlying resentment or anger about that. And then you learn to just tell yourself, well, my boss is doing the best they can, and I'm going to find a new job at some point in the future. I'm really smart. I'm a good worker. I'm capable. And then just kind of tell yourself that, almost like hypnotizing yourself with that monologue or that belief system. What you're doing is you're adding a layer of inauthenticity and not actually addressing what's underneath. So we're trying to use this this affirmation blanket to cover up the fact that underneath it, what we really believe is not that. What we believe is that we're being treated unfairly. We believe that our boss is picking on us, and maybe they are, who knows? And underneath that layer of our experience, we have an emotion or more than one emotion, and it may have been repressed for a long time, and now it's being repressed again in this situation. So if we don't see that, if we're not able to get down through those layers of experience and identity, then that material just stays repressed. And repressed material may not come out, at a specific time, but if you just keep repressing it, sooner or later, it's going to come out at an unopportune time. It's going to come out in an unconscious way, or it may come out as a sort of passive aggressiveness or manipulative behaviors towards others or inauthentic communicating and so forth. So my advice is always to just get down deep, actually find out what's going on. So I don't like to make blanket statements or absolutist statements about things like affirmations are never valuable. I wouldn't say that. It's just important to see how you're using things. If you're using an affirmation, what is your purpose and what is the effect of it? Are you actually getting to the root of the problem, or are you covering it up? An example where one form of affirmation may be valuable would be something like we have a perception such as the one I mentioned before, that my boss treats me unfairly, or my boss is not a good boss, and that's causing me to be unhappy at work or in life. Let's say that's our perception. So just covering it up with some sort of Band-Aid by just telling yourself you feel good when you don't, or you're smart, or you're a good worker, or something like that is probably not a good idea. It's just sort of inauthentic. On the other hand, we might be able to reinterpret that. And the way to reinterpret it, again, is going not upward into the mind or into another superficial layer of belief, but downward into the actual belief itself and then the emotion beneath it. So we can, instead of just adding a layer of quote unquote positive affirmation, what we can do is turn it into an inquiry question. Instead of just saying, oh, okay, I'm going to ignore the fact that my boss is treating me unfairly by convincing myself that I'm, in a good place otherwise, or I'm a smart person, or I'm a hard worker, or again, using affirmations. Instead, we can acknowledge the fact that we have that belief. I'm being treated unfairly. My boss is treating me unfairly, and the associated beliefs that it's making my life uncomfortable, miserable at work, etc. We can acknowledge that. Oh, okay, I actually hold those beliefs. So covering them up with some other, positive thoughts isn't going to help anything. That's just avoidance, right? So instead of avoiding or disassociating from what's actually happening, acknowledge it. Okay, I hold a belief here. I don't know where it came from, but I suspect it's because I've observed the behavior of my boss and I think that they treat me unfairly. Okay, well, let's investigate that deeper. So use inquiry. Is this true? What are the associated beliefs? Well, the associated beliefs are that I can't enjoy myself at work at all because of my boss. And that because I can't enjoy myself at work, I can't enjoy myself in life, right? Your beliefs may be something different, but that's the way you do this. Well, what are the associated beliefs? What is the cost of holding all these beliefs? Well, the cost is I'm pretty much convincing myself I'm miserable, right? So then you can start to ask, well, is all this true? Or is this what's really happening? Then you actually are open to and have an opportunity to perhaps reinvestigate, revisit, reinterpret what's actually happening. What is actually happening here? Because it looks like one part of what's happening is I'm blaming my boss for my unhappiness. Well, okay, what would this be like without blame? Or what if my boss isn't doing anything? Or what if my boss isn't singling me out or treating me unfairly? That's just how they treat everybody. Well, that feels a little different, right? So we start to reinterpret things, but you have to do it authentically and through questioning and through inquiry and through a willingness to go down through the belief system and see how true it is, how accurate it is. And it may be accurate, but it's important to actually look into it. And once we are comfortable with the beliefs and the associated beliefs, or comfortable with the fact that we actually hold these beliefs and we're aware of it, then we have the opportunity to go deeper into the emotions. Yeah, I feel resentment, and when I look at all those beliefs and things kind of settle in the mind, I feel that this resentment's actually been there longer than this job has. This resentment, it wasn't rooted in my interaction with this boss. It's old. It's older than that. Where does it go? Where does it bring me? Does it bring me back into childhood or something else that happened earlier in life when I was treated unfairly, right? So this is the power of inquiry. And by getting down to the root, which is ultimately in the emotion body and deeply held beliefs in association with emotion, which by investigating you can unhook or dismantle the resistance patterns around emotion, you have a real opportunity to completely reinterpret all this. And it's not reinterpreted at the level of thought. It actually untangles itself. It dissolves sometimes. Sometimes you find incredible clarity by doing this. So I think the spirit of affirmation or seeing things in a different light is well placed. And I'm sure, people who came up with this originally probably did that or had that intention in mind. But as things go in pop culture, they can get co-opted by ego and turn into something they're not, or we just misapply them. So I don't want to, throw affirmation down the toilet, but just pay attention to what you're actually doing, how you're using it, and always be willing to go deeper, investigate, inquire, be open, and ultimately feel everything that's going on in a situation. And most problems take care of themselves. Then you feel a peace that is pervasive, a peace that's better than telling yourself how good you feel. Because telling yourself how good you feel can start to feel really uncomfortable after a while, right? Because it feels inauthentic. It doesn't feel congruent with your deeper self, your deeper truth. So when you go down through all those layers of experience, belief, identity, that's when you experience that congruence, which is kind of the combination to the lock of peace. You just feel a sort of peace. And that's a good place to be. It's a good place to rest. And it's a great place to start to inquire into deeper truths about identity.